So I want to welcome everyone to our open table. And we come together today aware of many crises and uncertainties in our global community, in our country, in our state, and in our neighborhoods, all demanding our attention and response. Here we make connections, learn about resources, and renew our commitment to actions promoting safe and secure housing for all. We gather on the traditional homelands of the Puyallup tribe of Indians who have stewarded this coastal home for thousands of years and continue to do so today. We call ourselves to listen to and honor the voices and experiences of the indigenous peoples of this land and beyond. Today, I'm thinking about revolution. In their 1974 book, Revolution and Evolution in the 20th Century, U.S. activist philosophers Grace Lee Boggs and her husband James Boggs asked, "What time is it on the clock of the world?" In answer, they imagined the past 3,000 years of human history on a traditional clock face, with each minute counting for 50 years. Looked at this way, the age of revolutions began only 4 to 5 minutes ago, and in 1974, the U.S. Civil Rights Movement began a mere 15 seconds ago. They emphasized that while protest and rebellion against oppression are necessary to mobilize for change, a different mindset is called for in advancing the revolution that seeks to create a new society. In 2012, 3 years before her death at age 100, Grace published her last book titled The Next American Revolution: Sustainable Activism for the 21st Century. Drawing on 7 decades of activist experience, much of it focused on organizing in Detroit, Michigan, she offers important insights that move beyond protest to the kinds of daily engagements and community-based solutions that can help us imagine transformed structures. When I encountered the work of Grace Lee Boggs, I was deeply moved by her tireless advocacy for what Martin Luther King called the beloved community. She insists that the only way to survive is by taking care of each other. She contrasts the rush to economic overdevelopment with its traumatic consequence, human underdevelopment. I'm especially inspired by those who right now are confronting threats to democracy by promoting mutual aid and economic solidarity. We know each day as we come together each week that the sharing of basic resources with unhoused neighbors is essential, necessary work, but it does not itself do much to directly transform current power relations. Lost my place. The work can become transformative only if we try and try again to imagine what it will take to scale up human caring, to promote alternate structures and shared power. This is not a naive hope, even as each day brings more evidence all around us of terrifying brokenness. In the age of revolution, if the age of revolution began with imagining what was then unimaginable, questioning the divine right of kings, we can start a new revolution by imagining the unimaginable today, this time challenging the commodification and financialization of everything. Whatever actions we take up over the next months and years, we can all participate in the work of transformation. We can continue to ask, what is the time on the world's clock? And how does this action support the development of new humans and stronger community relationships? Grace Lee Boggs kept on imagining until her 100th year. Whatever time we have, if Grace is right, we will only survive through a revolution that makes caring for one another its first priority. Welcome to this work. So welcome everybody, and for those of you who may be new, just a brief reminder of how we manage our space here. We ask you to use the raise hand function whenever you'd like to be recognized, to keep yourself on mute when you're not speaking, and if you're doing something that might be distracting, to turn off your video, but to put it on when you can so we can get to meet each other with our faces at least more than our names. We also use the chat for conversation during the meeting, so if you're new and have questions that you would like to ask, be sure just put them right there. Someone will respond. And if you are with a group that would like to present to us and tell us what you do and how we might collaborate, Teresa Power-Judas will put her email in the chat, and you can make a contact with her about doing that in the future. So also, Rob puts in the chat our norms for conversation, and they're to give space and leave space to make sure we're aware of power dynamics, terms of how often we speak and how often we engage and who's engaging, and bring questions. We meet after this meeting to plan for the future. So if there are things that you'd like to have us deal with in terms of how we run our meetings and all, it's being there, is showing up, is who you get to have say in what we do. So be sure to do that. And so if you're new or returning from being away for a while, this is a good time to say hello, not to say everything you do in terms of introducing yourself. There'll be time for that later, but let us know you're here and we want to greet you. So if anyone does want to say hello, just raise your hand and we'll carry forth. All right, Whitney.
Thank you so much, Rosemary. Your introductions really ground my week, and I look forward to it every single week.
No, I mean the Zoom meeting.
For coalition?
Yeah.
I'm Whitney Stevens. I'm a candidate for mayor, and I come to these meetings to be grounded in the things that matter in our community most and to learn from everybody. So thank you for including me every week.
Welcome, Whitney. It's good to have you.
And your cat.
And this is Libby. Every time I talk on a Zoom meeting, she has to come and make herself present by knocking over things on my desk.
Yes.
Well, Rob, I don't see other folks who want to say hello in this public way, but if you want to introduce yourself or haven't been able to raise your hand or speak, you can put that in the chat and people will have conversation with you and welcome you all very much.
Thank you, Rosemary, and as always, for setting the tone for this week's meeting. I really appreciate that. Let's shift over to the first thing that we do every week, which is talking about what we're seeing happening this week on the streets. The opportunity for this segment of the meeting is to share changes you're seeing, and to bring up any needs that seem to be changing on the streets right now. I will say, in terms of our current weather for folks who are living outdoors, we're looking at some wet days here in the next few days. There's been a bit of a break from the rain before this, so there's bound to be needs for folks to have new tarps and things like that in order to get through um, the challenges of the weather. The good news is that we don't see any high temperatures that are going to be a concern in the 10-day forecast, but we're keeping an eye on that to be able to respond if that does pop up. This is a great time to begin building up your supplies for the hot weather. Things like getting water stored away so that you can hand that out to folks when we get to those 80-degree temperatures that we know are going to be coming. So let me step aside. The one caveat I will remind folks is please don't share exact locations where you have a concern. If you have an exact location where someone needs some help, you can send a direct message to me and I can make sure that gets to outreach folks. We're just concerned about raising up the exact location of folks who then may be targeted for sweeps. So let me step aside and encourage anybody who has observations of what they're seeing in their neighborhood to share with the group, and maybe the 62 of us in this room can help respond. And as always, I'm not afraid to call on people because I love to hear a diversity of voices from across the county. So it'd be great to hear that voluntarily. Yeah, go ahead, McKinley.
Good morning. I just wanted to share that one of the things that I observed in this past week was a group of folks getting swept at midnight from under the overpass by the casino. on Portland Avenue. So that was pretty disappointing and frustrating to observe happen. And they did not, of course, have any warning that was going to be taking place.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning that. From what I understand, it sounded like that was tribal police that may have done that. Is that your understanding?
That's correct.
Yeah. Yeah, so it might be a good thing to do some have some conversations just with how they're approaching that, to see if there's a way that that could be done more humanely. Sarah, I see your hand up next.
Hi, Sarah Howe here from the Tacoma Tenants Union, Pierce County Association of the Blind, Washington Council of the Blind, and I wanted to say I've been asked. We have a newsletter that goes out every 3 months, and um, I'm going to be the theme this time is advocacy, and I am going to be writing a personal story about how it seems to me that advocacy doesn't seem to end, and that there's always people who are in dire straits on the street. And I just want you guys to know that I'm going to be doing this, and I hope you don't mind.
No, don't mind at all.
Awareness needs to be out there, and I feel like if I can do anything, I will. I mean, I'm advocating because of myself, but also I want to show that in advocating for myself, I've advocated for others. I think people need to know that.
Yeah, yeah, that's great, Sarah.
And as I said in the chat, I will have to leave early thanks to advocacy.
Yep, you have to have priorities.
Yep. Got to pay the bills. Thanks,
Yep.
Rob.
Yep. Trisha, I saw your hand up earlier. Did you want to step in?
Yeah, I just was gonna say about the tribal police. They are doing postings and such. They don't
Okay.
give the same amount of notice as some other areas do. However, my understanding, and I wanted to get clarification for certain on this, but my understanding is that what you saw was the result of a fire. There had been a fire nearby, so they were having to move people along. But I certainly am happy to reach out to the tribe to find out how we can partner and collaborate on that.
Oh, that's fantastic, Trisha. And that is really helpful context. It makes a little more sense that for the timing, at least.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
great. Good to have you here, Trisha. Anyone else with updates on what they've been seeing on the streets in their community recently? I do want to mention the passing of a person who was homeless and very visible in the north end of Tacoma recently. Only heard about it on Reddit, so I don't really have any details, but there was a woman who many outreach teams had reached out to on the corner of 21st and I Street area, who I know I've received a number of messages about on the coalition email list. Apparently, here a week or so ago, her absence was noted, and folks noted a cross and some flowers at the corner. So she did pass away. But again, don't know any details, but it's a reminder of the challenges that folks are having surviving on the streets, surviving with um, mental health and substance use issues, and some of the challenges of being able to connect people to, if the services are available, being able to build the trust to get people into services that might be able to help their situation. So just a tragedy, I think, is worth noting. It's one that I know Jan Runbeck has reached out to Pastor Ed Jacobs about as well, just to make sure that um, her name is captured and honored during the next quarterly memorial service that Pastor Ed hosts. Anyone else with updates? I saw, Sally, you put in the chat some context from the hilltop. Anything you want to bring into space verbally?
didn't have a chance to do much this week, so a lot of extra stuff going on. So I will try to catch up with folks either on the weekend or early next week. Thanks.
Yep. Thank you, Sally. Anyone else with updates before we move on? All right, so you can continue offering updates if you are seeing needs in the chat, and there's always an active community there sharing what folks are seeing and some of the needs. I also will remind people, I see Christine Lindquist on screen. Christine periodically has been sending emails to the list with updates about some of the supply needs that exist, including supply needs for the supply closet in downtown Tacoma off Tacoma Avenue. Do you want to mention any of that here, Christine, some of the needs that you shared?
Yeah. I did post the link. If folks have outreach supply items that you can share or that you might need for your own outreach or for an organization that you work with. I know at the Common Good Supply Closet, which will be open today from noon to 2 p.m. Last week we had a lot of requests for tents, sleeping bags, tarps, and backpacks. If anyone has any to share, we'd love to get those from you. And I'm sure that others could use them as well. And the Common Good Outreach Supply Closet is open every Tuesday and Friday from noon to 2. Teresa's there on Tuesdays and I'm there on Fridays. And so if you just want to stop in and check out the space, you can always do that as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Christine. And thanks to everybody who keeps the Common Good Supply Closet going. And the only thing I would add is that the supply closet has also been open extra time during inclement weather. So when we get to that point again, that's something to keep in mind. Yeah, Sheila.
Real quick, Christine, does the supply closet have an Amazon wish list? Did I miss that?
We don't have one. That's a great idea, Sheila.
Because there's things I believe that, you know, if you put in the request in the wish list, then that can be fulfilled either anonymously or what have not, and then sent directly to the supply closet where you receive it.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent idea. I'll coordinate with Teresa and set something up.
Perfect.
All right, so let's shift over to the next item on the agenda, and that is a quick update on the Pierce County Comprehensive Plan to End Homelessness. And I'm going to share a few slides from the County Council committee meeting that took place earlier this week. But I'm seeing a lot of a lot of comments in the chat related to this as well. So it's probably a good topic to cover. At the Pierce County, the committee meeting on Monday, there was a conversation about the unified regional approach. And I see Mary Connolly dropping some information about that in the chat right now. What I'll do here is just share a couple of slides from that presentation, and so that we can talk about what's going on with the consultant process, working on the unified regional approach, and what the current ask is to build these task forces in 3 different areas. So right now, as you've seen in the chat, there's recruiting going on for folks with lived experience, direct service providers, local government staff, and others to help fill out 3 task forces. That's not an easy thing to say. Related to the unified regional approach. The ask is for folks who have the capacity to participate in between 6 and 10 meetings that will take place between June and January. And going through the slides, these are the 3 areas that they're going to be focusing on, and that they're looking for expertise from the community, including community members, to fill out an interest form and let the consultants know if you'd be interested in helping with this effort. Um, Problems to solve for the operation task force is talking about things like the single point of entry, data sharing, creating standard contract language, and standard operating processes. Looking at the governance task force, the focus there will be around creating interlocal agreements, setting up structure and authority for what a unified regional approach could be, and then engaging individual jurisdictions. So the number of communities across the county, making sure everyone is on board to help work with the effort. And then the finance task force is going to focus on problems including resource transparency, finding new and sustainable revenue, which is always a huge challenge, especially in the budget climate that we're looking at now, unified funding advocacy, and having a regional approach to service contracts. And then I don't really need to share that. That's just a timeline. But this is currently the consulting effort has finished the scoping work, has recruited members for the elected leadership group and the staff planning group for this process. And now they're in the design phase, which is supposed to continue up through March. And then following at this time next year, they'll be in an implementation phase before the consulting contract ends at the end of 2026. So right now, the work that's underway is to um, determine what a unified regional approach for Pierce County will look like, and making sure that we have an informed approach that will work for Pierce County. Um, I do know that we have some other experts on this call who could
The
provide
Epic
some additional
list
details.
does not,
Go ahead, Keith.
I apologize, Rob, I didn't realize I was on mute.
Oh, no problem. But I do want to open the floor for others, especially from the county or who participated in the meeting on Monday, who could provide any additional context that might be helpful as people in this room try to decide if they want to be part of one of these task force groups. Yeah, go ahead, Mary.
I can try and do that. Can you see me?
I can.
Okay, great. Yeah, you did a great job covering it. I think that these task forces, it seems like they're really going to be sprints in terms of doing a lot in a short amount of time. The interest form that I put in the chat, I think has a little bit more information on exactly when those task forces will be meeting. There's also going to be stipends or compensation available for certain people who are eligible. And I believe that specifically people with lived experience within the past 10 years, people who are service providers and otherwise aren't being compensated. And then I believe there's also an income eligibility requirement. And I've reviewed those guidelines, but just don't have them committed to memory. But I will put in the chat Liza's email. You can contact her if you have questions about the stipends and compensation. I'll just drop that interest form again. And I think there will be about 15 people on each task force. So not everybody who fills out the interest form will necessarily be able to be on one, but there's also going to be some other opportunities like through surveys, focus groups, and interviews. So yeah, I would love to get as many folks who are interested filling that out as possible. And so yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mary, for that additional context. And I'll admit, when I sat through the meeting online on Monday, when the county council was updated about this, it wasn't really clear what the role or what the opportunity would be for general advocates in the community. So I do think it's good to if you have an interest and have the time, it's good to throw your hat in the ring, so to say, to to participate in this process. It also could put your name on the radar for being part of those focus groups that might happen around this process as well. But I think it's for this to be a successful effort, it needs to be as well informed as possible. And so a real breadth of voices will be helpful to make sure that that there's a common understanding and well-informed approach. Anybody with questions about the process? And I do want to thank Sally, and I ended up chatting back and forth throughout that entire meeting, as we've done on a couple meetings recently. And I'm a little less cynical about it than I was listening to it originally on Monday. So that's a good thing. I don't know if Sally is.
Good for you, Rob.
Yeah. Somehow I found optimism at the end of the week. All right, so I'm going to look at our agenda real quick here, and the next thing we have queued up is we have been planning for a visit from Congressional Representative Marilyn Strickland, and I don't know if Marilyn's here yet. Not seeing her on the user list. So we may fill time here for a second before we get to that. So why don't we talk a little bit about advocacy updates for just a moment before we see Representative Strickland join us. So Sally, not to put you on the spot, but to put you on the spot, have you had a chance to look at City of Tacoma advocacy opportunities?
Yes, there's nothing on the agenda for the study session this upcoming Tuesday that involves us, at least explicitly. On May 20th at 10 o'clock, there is a government performance committee meeting, and they are looking at the city's public records policy, which might be of interest to some of you, and they get a monthly budget report. There is a special meeting listed for May 23rd at 9 o'clock, a special city council meeting, but no notice and no agenda, so I don't know what the topic is. Next week, which is the short week because of Memorial Day, there are no city meetings.
Great, thank you, Sally. And of course, the county agendas are not posted yet.
But you can hack that system by looking at the previous week's rules committee packet. So
yes,
here's what I have for the county so far. This could change. The May 19th county study session, they're going to be talking about council priorities for 26-27. So that would be an interesting place to look for investments in both homelessness services and affordable housing. The Community Development Committee is going to meet on May 19th, and they're going to talk about the nuisance code and code enforcement. And I have asked Robin Denson if that includes the county's work to do sweeps. I'm just curious. And then on May 20th, Health and Human Services is meeting at 9:30, and they will be hosting a report from Habitat for Humanity, Family Promise, and TRM on their various efforts on shelter and housing. So that could be a really interesting meeting. I would urge people either to watch it if you can live or watch the video when it's posted. So that's the report from the county.
awesome. Thank you, Sally. And I see Sarah's hand up, and then we can move on to Representative Strickland, who I see is in the room. Go ahead, Sarah.
Can you hear me now?
We can.
Isn't there a meeting with DSHS about caregivers for the disabled? I got an email about it, but I can't remember the date.
There may be, but it's not on my radar, so we can look into that.
Thank you. That's all I wanted to know.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right, so I did want to take the opportunity now to welcome U.S. Representative Marilyn Strickland to the meeting. It's great to see you on the call. And we invited you today to talk to us a little bit about your perspective on what's been happening in Washington, D.C. and its impact on Pierce County, especially focused on the issue of homelessness. So thank you so much for joining us, and I'll step aside.
Great. Well, thank you for having me here. It's nice to be with you all today. I could probably talk for 6 hours nonstop about all the transgressions, so I'm going to try and stay focused specifically on the work that you're doing. And so, as you all know, President Trump has been in office for over 100 days. It feels like 100 years. And it feels as though every hour on the hour, there is some transgression or something insane coming out of this administration. What we have to do as members of Congress who are in the minority as House Democrats, there are 215 of us, and you need 218 votes to pass anything. So, in order for us to pass anything or stop anything, aside from litigation, which is what's happening, we would have to get 3 or 4 Republicans to cross over and join us. With that said, I would say the biggest thing right now that we're discussing is the budget, and they're in negotiations right now. I heard as of this morning it's gone completely sideways for the majority. And the biggest lie being told is that we're not going to cut Medicaid and we're not going to cut food benefits. And in order for them to decrease the budget by $860 billion, they have to touch those programs. You can't do it without doing that. And so there are some pitch battles going on. As Democrats, we are very vocal about what the consequences are of cutting Medicaid. In Washington State, we know it as Apple Health. And in your world and the advocacy that you do and the what I call the human services ecosystem, it will kick people off of healthcare. It will take care away from the disabled. 70% of people in nursing homes rely on Medicaid to help pay those bills. It will take food away from hungry children. And they're engaged in all types of activities from, litmus tests to see, do you qualify? And I use this in quotation marks. Able-bodied people should all be working. We want them to report every week that they're looking for a job. So just a host of things that really undermine and disrespect the people who need these services. When it comes to housing, they are trying to decimate HUD. There are rumors that they're going to take away a lot of vouchers, and all that's going to do is take people out of homes and put them on the streets. And so, as we try to figure out what to do, I'd say our top priorities are this. We have to preserve Medicaid or Apple Health, as we know it in Washington State. We have to make sure that people understand the consequences of taking these types of actions. And then at the local level, what kind of backstops can city, county, and state put together, understanding that a lot of entities are operating in a budget deficit. But even before this president took office and this administration started doing what they were doing, we already had a housing crisis. We already had a housing shortage. We don't have enough shelter beds. We don't have enough places for people to go. And there are too many people who do not have safe and secure shelter right now. Compound that with the cuts they want to make in behavioral health, in mental health, in substance abuse, and these things just get worse and worse. And so what we're trying to do right now is hold the line. We do think that there may be an opportunity to try and stave off some of the cuts they're going to make, but they're basically trying to provide tax breaks for their bazillionaire friends on the backs of people in need and on the backs of hardworking families. That's the bottom line. Let me talk about some of the things that Trump has proposed. Cutting $26 billion in rental assistance programs, a $1 billion decrease to the agency responsible for overseeing the 988 suicide hotline. He wants to end funding for over 165,000 permanent supportive housing units. And so again, we are daylighting these. We're talking about the harm this will do to communities. And I remind folks too that the folks who need these services live in red and blue districts, okay? When you are struggling, there's no discrimination between what your political affiliation is or where it happens. I've also asked the committee to fund the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration at the highest amount possible. And we're going to continue to advocate for, they used to be called earmarks, they're now called community-directed spending, to try and rehabilitate Salishan renovation, which will at least save 316 units. So we're doing everything we can. I will admit that these are challenging times. The one good thing I will say, though, is that whenever we go to court, we prevail. So 92% of the time, when we take this administration to court, we do prevail. The challenge, however, is that this administration does not respect the rule of law. So even if a judge says or a court says something should or should not happen, they still go about their business. And so I tell folks two things. What can we do at the local level, state level, and county level? The reply or the retort to Project 2025, because that's exactly what this is Project 2026. We have to take the House back because we will be the only firewall and backstop to all these heinous activities of this administration that frankly doesn't care about people. So I will stop there. Yes, I'm ranting a bit because it's exhausting and sometimes you feel so powerless, but I'm thankful that you are here actually doing the work at home, and we will do everything we can to be effective partners and get you the resources that you need. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Representative Strickland. And do you have a few moments for some questions from folks?
Oh, absolutely. Actually, I want to take questions. That's always the best part of this. I can't promise you I'm going to give you definitive answers, but I want to hear what's on your mind so I can take that back to Democratic leadership.
Awesome. All right, so let's open the floor. Anybody with questions that they would like to ask? Don't be shy. Yeah, don't be shy. Yeah, go ahead, Christine.
Thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate it. I just want to know what is the best thing for us to do to support the representation that we have that we know already supports the things we believe in, but is in the minority?
Yeah, I would say two things. And we get asked this question a lot. And actually, I appreciate you're basically asking, what can we do? And, so much about the discussion of government, aside from trying to turn government workers into villains and make people in need look like they're just lazy and irresponsible, is that we have to make these stories personal. And I'll give you one good example, Christine. I did a telephone town hall with Martin O'Malley, the former director of Social Security. We had 20,000 people on that call, the highest volume ever. And there was a caller who said to me, I am barely scraping by on Social Security. I can barely pay my rent. I'm taking care of my daughter who's on Medicaid and disabled. What am I supposed to do if something bad happens? And I think we have to stop making it about agencies and government and organizations and talk about the real life impacts of how this affects people. So when we communicate, don't make it about your agency or the work you're doing. Make it about how the people we are serving are going to be affected by this. I think this is really important. And one other thing I remind folks of, especially in the conversation about Medicaid, some people think, number one, it's only for people in dire need, and they don't know that a lot of working families rely on Medicaid. But the other thing that's very important here is that even if you don't use Medicaid, you will be affected by it because it's going to disrupt the entire healthcare system, which is already under a strain. Your insurance premiums will go up, your wait times will be longer, because even if you kick someone off of Medicaid, if they need help, they're going to show up in the emergency room. And so I think reminding people that the Medicaid cuts just don't affect the people who actually depend on Medicaid. So communicate, make it human. And as I often say, 95 million people didn't vote in the last election who are eligible to vote. I mean, that is a mind-boggling number. And so, in my entire life, this is the most important election of your lifetime. Democracy is at stake. Our humanity is at stake, and we have to show up in big numbers. And I tell folks, our candidates are never going to be perfect, but we cannot demand perfection when everything is at stake right now. So those are my three pieces of advice for this.
Thank you. And Dr. Jarvie, your hand's up next.
Thanks, Representative Strickland. I've been a fan of you since early Tacoma days, so I'm just kind of overwhelmed by your visit to us. So thank you very much. But I have a question. So we had a few local representatives, elected officials a couple of weeks ago, and I asked a question about where do we go from here? How do we keep progressing? How do we keep moving forward? And I was a little bit disappointed because their response was more like maintain. We've got to maintain our local majority. We've got to maintain that. I believe that we should be moving forward and that we should not be trying to be middle of the road, try not to move center right, that we should continue strongly with our progressive ideas and our concepts, and that's how we win people, is when we get when we get progressive ideas, and we get successes, and we get happening, and we get moving, and then we inspire more people to join in. But I want to kind of ask you what your advice, because I believe that you're a pretty progressive person, and what do you say to us local people? We're in a blue state, a blue city, a blue county, but we don't want to just maintain a majority. We want to keep moving forward and growing and progressing. So how do we do that?
So I'm going to give you a long answer, but I think this is a very good question, because I think what you're asking is, this is about democratic policy and politics. And so I tell folks that the very first thing that we Democrats have to do is be practical and realistic. Now, on the spectrum of Democrats, we have the progressives and we have the blue dogs. And I'm left of center here. So that's where I consider myself in the Democratic pantheon, but I'm still a Democrat. And what I tell folks is, this is not a conversation about progressive versus moderate. This is a conversation about how do we win a national election. And sometimes that means that we have to think about what the winning formula is. We have to get outside of our bubble, because as I've learned in Congress, a lot of people do not think the way we do. We have to get out of our Washington state blue bubble, because the entire country does not behave the way we do. And so for me, it's not a conversation about progressive versus moderate. We want everyone to be part of our tent, because that's the winning coalition that Barack Obama was able to put together. But I want to point out one thing that I kind of touched on earlier. As we talk about how we form a winning coalition, what we cannot do is make people pass a litmus test to see if they can be part of our tent. And let me give you an example. There are people I know who are in my community who may or may not be 100% sure how they feel about DEI. To them, they think that it might mean that their more qualified kid isn't getting into college because some other kid who's not qualified is getting in. And instead of saying you're ignorant and racist, we have to say, tell me more. So we have to meet people where they are. And the example that I use is that Barack Obama was not a supporter of marriage equality in the beginning. Mm-hmm. But we embraced him because he was with us on 98% of every other issue. And so for me, when I think about how we win, we actually behave like a big tent. And we say to folks, you know what? If you're with me 80%, you're going to come on in anyway. And we're going to work together so we can learn and grow and find a way for you to understand why some people think these things are important. But a litmus test will not help us win a presidency and get our country out of the grips of MAGA. That is the absolute truth. Now, congressional races are different because every district is different. And, you know, my district is considered a Democrat plus 5 or 6 on the partisan scale. So not a safe seat, but pretty Democrat for the most part. There are people I serve with whose partisan index is D plus 25. It is the safest seat on the planet. And so to your question, it's not progressive versus moderate, it's all of the above. But the most important element here is that we welcome everyone and we figure out what it takes to win a national election, because we're talking about an entire country that's diverse, not just the deep blue state of Washington.
I'm looking at the time, and I know your commitment was for 15 minutes. Do you have a couple more? We have 2 more hands.
Oh, I'm happy to take a couple more. Absolutely. How
Okay.
about you get to meet with your congresswoman on Zoom?
Yeah, that's right. Well, we appreciate that. Trisha, your hand's up next.
Yeah, good morning and thanks for being here. I do have a question. You said about making it about the people and not the agencies is of utmost importance. I think a lot of times, as someone who's done this work for over a decade in this county, I think a lot of times we go to the agency standpoint because that's our livelihood as well. And most of us are not very far from the people we serve when it comes to finances and things like that. Most of America is not very far. So I appreciate that comment, and I appreciate that viewpoint. And I think it's something all of us can hold on to. I have long had a statement I make, and people who are about to hear it again probably will roll their eyes and say, "Shut up, Trisha." But you know, I have a belief of talk to the boots, not the suits. We need people to come out and see what we see, because people who are writing budgets, people who are writing policy, are writing it from behind a desk with a script. And it's the same scenario that people who are pre-authorizing medications, who are reading from a script and have no idea what they're talking about. To that effort, you know, I invited our previous our previous governor to come do some outreach with us, and I clearly wouldn't make it in today's dating world because I got ghosted pretty hard. But I will say that I would love for you or one of your representatives to be able to come out and see what we're seeing, because I think that that's really where it's going to become personal, as you said. That is where we could, all of us could spend 4 or 5, 6 weeks telling you stories 24 hours a day. But for people to come see what we're seeing, I think that's going to make a difference. And I know it's made a difference in our local council, because when they come with us for point in time count, we see some changes and some different efforts after that. And so what can we do to connect with you or your staff and other people that are there at the Capitol to be able to come see what we're seeing?
Yeah, I mean, and I would say one thing is that, you know, I come from local government. And so
Right.
I am very much in touch with the clients that you all serve and are trying to assist. And I live around the corner on Pacific Avenue here near the 34th Street block. There is a lot that has tiny homes and car park and those things. And so I'm happy to see if my staff or I can actually do a site visit. I will tell you that I'm rarely here in Washington State because of the schedule that the Republicans have put together, but we can definitely do some, you know, do some work to see the folks that you're serving. And, you know, I will also say this too, as we talk about the very human experience and what this means, I think for some folks, they don't understand that the way someone ended up being homeless or even homeless for a long time wasn't just one thing. It's often cumulative, right? One little thing happens,
Right.
and then it just starts to snowball and snowball and snowball, and suddenly you can't pay your rent and there's nowhere for you to live. And you know, there are people in my life who I've known for a long time who I have had to assist to keep them from being homeless. And so I appreciate that your ability and willingness to tell the stories, because there's no one story, right? They come from so many different places.
Right.
Yeah.
I think one of the bigger things too is that we all see the people, but I want others to be able to see the challenges that as providers these people
Yes.
face in getting the help. You know,
Yeah.
someone's begging to get off a dope and we have to tell them it's a 2-week wait, or we have to
I
wait for
know.
an assessment and you have to go to an office for 2 hours, or
I
you know,
know.
whatever the case is. And while we are all working on making those systems different and better and more client friendly on our level, I just think a higher level would help to see that. So I do appreciate your viewpoint. I also want to echo what you said about Medicaid. People, I drive a Kia. My Kia has never been stolen, but I can tell you my insurance has more than doubled and is now more than my car note because of all the Kias being stolen across the United States. And the same thing, like you said about the insurance premium, that's a real thing. And I think that we do need to keep some focus on that as well, about the Medicaid funding, because it will be devastating. It will be deadly. So
It will
thanks
affect
again
all
for
of
your
us.
time.
Thank you. And I can take
Right.
two
Thank
more
you
questions.
again.
Great. And let's see, I think Marilee had a question as well.
Marilee, did she leave?
I think she may have hit
You're
the
on
wrong.
mute.
No, okay, she's back. Okay, get off mute,
Okay.
please. Thank you.
Yep,
Thank
here I am. Thank you.
Hi.
Old eyes trying to find little microphones. First of all, thank you for being here. Secondly, this is a broad tent as a coalition. Obviously, you know, our focus is obviously on the most marginalized, but I'm a former McKinney-Vento liaison for a school district out in Sumner Bonnie Lake, where we've identified in Sumner Bonnie Lake over 315 children who have experienced homelessness this year in our schools, going up, up, up. But I want to make so we're a broad tent here. I want to make 3 points. Number one, thank you to Peter Ramalay in your office and Liz Larder, who have helped me as we've been dealing with our families from Ukraine on humanitarian parole who are facing homelessness. The kinds of email they're getting through their CBP1 app that's telling them to leave within a week. I mean, we are terrifying and just antagonizing and upsetting our most marginalized folks who have no homes to return to back in Ukraine. And we don't often talk about that group of people here in this coalition, but we've had over 400 students come to us in the last few years from Ukraine. So all of a sudden, this is our business. Peter's been just great, as well as Liz. So thank you. Secondly, you were talking about making Medicaid personal, and I haven't shared my story with this group. I'll make it very brief because of time. You may know our story, but I lost my husband 3 years ago to a terminal illness called multiple system atrophy that he battled for 10 years. 5 years of that was on a ventilator. And I never thought a school district official who owned a home, who had a somewhat stable life, would almost face bankruptcy because of medical costs. His costs went to $250,000 a year the last 5 years of his life living on a ventilator. And I'm telling you this story because I am one of those people. We are one of those families that people don't identify as those people, those people who aren't here legally. We were facing catastrophic issues. We put out over $150,000 in cash out of our pocket prior to applying for help. I almost had to get divorced in order to get help. I had to apply 3 times and get a lawyer. That's Medicaid before Trump. And the thought of him removing 13.7 million people from this, claiming that we're only putting Medicaid benefits out to people who are here, quote unquote, illegally, is just false. I'm one of those people. I'm happy to tell my story anytime, because if you are facing a catastrophic illness in your family, our current system has so many gaps in it as people are just trying to survive. And later today, I'll be visiting a mom who's got stage 4 cancer with a 10-year-old little girl who she doesn't know how she's going to pay rent at only $1,200 a month here in Sumner. And we're doing everything we can as a community because all the resources are gone. I mean, those are the families we're trying to help and the very benefits that are being pulled from our system. And then finally, if you want to know what other people are saying to justify this kind of draconian action of making all these cuts, I just go to your Facebook accounts and read the troll comments. I was trying to.
I do not read the comments. As a rule, I do not read the comments.
I was trying to promote Dr. Schreier staying up all night in her committee hearing. And this is my last comment, I promise. And thank you so much. This is what it meant to me and my family. And the trolls that came out were saying all those millions of people that will be cut off of Medicaid are here illegally. That's the bottom line. And there's so much narrative that's incorrect. And I think we, as your supporters, we need to get out there and tell our stories that are correct.
No, and I think it's interesting you brought that up because there seems to be a default answer that my colleagues across the aisle give. Those illegals, it doesn't matter what the topic is. They will just drag that into the conversation as a distraction from the evil that they are doing. And what I also tell folks, I said one thing, someone asked a question earlier, one thing I forgot to say too, is that, we have to hold Republicans accountable for this. And by only bringing heat to Democrats, we are letting them walk away scot-free. And so what I tell folks, even if you're not represented by a Republican, every time they vote, they're taking a vote that's going to affect you. So ask number 4, make sure that you reach out to their offices and light them up and hold them accountable. Because what's happening in DC, honestly, is that all these terrible things are happening behind the scenes. I have Republican colleagues who are like, oh my God, this is awful. I can't believe they're doing this. And I'm like, well, then speak up. Join our petition that says this is illegal. Do something. Put your money where your mouth is. And they just seem to be paralyzed in fear, or they pivot to them illegals. I'd say the other thing too in these draconian, because remember, they're doing it in the name of reducing the deficit. All they're going to do is increase the deficit by trillions of dollars, and they're going to borrow money, again, borrow money to give tax breaks to their friends. And so I get a little fired up about this because it's so wrong. But again, we need you in the fight. We need you to raise your voices. And as I said earlier, as Democrats who are going to vote in 26 and 28, we cannot be divided as a party, okay? Whoever the nominee is, I'm going to be all in 100%, even if it wasn't my first, second, or third choice, okay? We are, there's a clear contrast here, and we cannot let infighting or personal drama or being in our feelings get in the way of the work that we have to do. So anyway, we'll take one more question, then I have to go because I have a meeting at 10 o'clock.
Sounds good. Sarah, your hand's up. Why don't you ask the last question?
I I have a question. Do these people understand that a lot of these people are not illegals? I know people that are blind that are terrified to go into shelters because they won't get accepted, and then when people try to help them, they're afraid they're going to put into assisted living. I've seen that um somebody get tricked into it, and I've seen somebody have to go into it due to domestic violence. Um, I'm totally blind. I'm in a wheelchair and I live independently. I have other disabilities and I live independently and I want to keep that independence.
Yeah.
I see when my friend is in assisted living and the only problem she has is communication, and I have to have communication due to my severe health issues. I
Yeah.
need to be in charge and I can't be in charge if I'm in one of those places, and it's not fair that people should be put in those places when they don't need to be.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is more of a policy level that's probably on the state or local level. But I want to address something that you said, Sarah. You said, I'm afraid. And
Oh, I
making
am.
people afraid is part of their strategy. They want you to be afraid, they want you to be silent, and they want you to disappear. And think about this, there are people who are actually US citizens who are being kidnapped and abducted and being sent out of this country. And so again, I
I
know
don't
it's a lot to
I
ask.
don't disappear.
No, but that's
Just
what they
ask
want
the
us
city
to
of
do.
just ask the city of Tacoma. You can Google my name. It's Sarah, Sarah, last name Howe. You can Google me and you will see me all over the place. I do not disappear.
But I think everyone needs to have that attitude. And then before I go, I know my staff is like, come on, Marilyn, you got to leave now for the next meeting. The conversation about diversity, equity, and inclusion, you know, they're coming after that. And they literally have a search function. And if certain words appear in your organization or institution, they will find an excuse to come after you and to try to bully you and to tell you you can't do that work. So here is one piece of advice I give to people. Triple down on the work. You can call it whatever you want, but don't make yourself a target. And this is not being fearful, it's being smart and strategic. And so keep doing the work because we need it now more than we've ever needed it. But be smart. Don't make yourself a target. So if you want to call it being more efficient, you want to call it whole community, call it whatever you want. But this work must continue to happen. And so with that, thank you for having me here. Garrett, thank you so much for the invitation. We need you in the fight. So do your work unapologetically. We are fighting so hard for you, but make sure you hold people accountable, and then let's go out and win in 26 and win in 28.
Thank you, Representative Strickland. It's great to see you again.
Great. Thanks to see you all. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, so let's move on to our updates from government partners. Speaking of government and governing, and let's get started with any updates from the city of Tacoma.
Morning, everyone. It's gonna be tough following Representative Strickland, I'll tell you that much. Morning, Matthew Jorgensen, City of Tacoma Neighborhood and Community Services. I've got a few updates for you all this week. Neighborhood and Community Services will be presenting an update on the opioid settlement funding at City Council study session on June 3rd. That'll be noon on June 3rd. And then also I'm trying to do my best without doing acronyms, a request for proposals, the RFP for building resilience against youth violence and exploitation, which we call BRAVE, was issued last week, and that will close on June 3rd as well. And I'll post a link to the RFP in the chat. And then just so you all know, the quarterly homelessness update for June will be in memo form. So be on the lookout for that around June 10th. And then kind of a non-update update where city staff is still working with county and state staff to figure out the funding piece for extending those shelter beds past that June 30th stand down date. And definitely if we get good news, you know, we'll share that as quick as possible. So happy to take any questions and hopefully have some answers.
Garrett, I see your hand up.
Yeah, regarding the opioid settlement funds, opioid deaths are massively disproportionately people experiencing homelessness. So just saying, if you've got some opioid settlement funds and you've got a bit of a deficit in your current shelter funding, you might push that internally. So that's not a question, that's unsolicited advice. Sorry, Matthew.
No, thanks for that, Garrett. I appreciate it.
That's the kind of thinking we need, Garrett. Thank you. Anybody else with a question for Matthew? All right. Thanks, Matthew.
All right, thank you.
And let's see, Devin, you're back.
I am
How about
back.
updates?
Thank you. Right in time. Good morning, everyone. Devin Isaacson, she, her, Pierce County Human Services. I don't have a lot of updates today, except for one big one that I did want to share out with folks. Our youth homelessness demonstration program coordinated community plan draft. So this is one of two, will be submitted to HUD today for review. This was a big milestone, and a really big piece of this project is getting that coordinated community plan into HUD. What I would also say is that HUD shortened the CCP this year. So we actually are working on a little bit of a longer version for the community that has a little bit more details on strategies towards getting to our goals. So huge accomplishment there by all of the folks that are working on YHCP. The other update I have is that the Housing and Essential Needs request for proposal is currently out on OpenGov. That is a program that provides rental assistance for folks through that are connected to the DSHS system. So encourage folks to apply that are interested in administering those funds. And then the last thing I have is that so far, the governor has not signed it yet, but so far it is looking like there's not going to be big hits to the Pierce County homeless funds through Commerce. We don't have a final budget yet. I will share that with everyone when we have it. But preliminarily, it is looking like we're not going to experience huge cuts. So that's very good news.
Thank you, Devin. Anybody with questions for Devin? Not seeing any. All right, so let's shift over to updates from the Tacoma Pierce County Health Department, and I see Isaiah on screen.
Yes, I am here. So it is Isaiah. Just a reminder for folks that I'm a new program, so I'm now part of the street medicine program. So I have a few quick updates to share about that. Let me just pull them up. So for today, in the last week, in our outreach efforts, we saw about 82 people. We have also onboarded our first doctor, Dr. Joe Alvarez. He was onboarded on Monday. And the ARNP will be starting on May 27th. So we have our few medical personnel that are getting started up now. We're also finalizing deployment schedule through June 30th. So deployment will include outreach and folks who are doing wound care as well. And we're waiting for the city of Tacoma to give us our no-cost extension. We also have ordered some equipment for testing and labs for the Coachman, which is our medical unit, to make sure it's clean. And we're looking at our daily schedules that involves parking locations. So, and following up on care time for when we'll be doing outreach. So most importantly, we're still looking out for potential parking locations. So we're trying to get leasing agreements with them. So if anyone here has any options or ideas about owners that we could contact for parking locations, that would be super wonderful, specifically in hotspots around the Tacoma area. So those are my updates. I know that's a lot. So if folks have questions for me, please let me know.
Yeah, any questions for Isaiah? Yeah, Teresa.
So I'm glad you've been able to see so many people, and I'm wondering two things. One is, where are you seeing them since you don't seem to have parking lots yet? And what are the main issues that you are dealing with for people?
Absolutely. We really just have to drive around. Brogan came on, so she did outreach this week. I was gone earlier this week, so I wasn't there specifically. But when I do outreach, a lot of it is just driving around. It takes up a lot of time to find people. In my personal experience, we find a lot of folks over in the Puyallup Portland Ave area, so by Major Petroleum, by the underpass, things like that. So I'm not going to give specific locations if I can help it, but in that general area. So a lot of it is just driving around finding people. We're not finding a lot of encampments. We're finding more like smaller groups of individuals, as far as in my personal experience. And in terms of what we're seeing, I mean, in terms of what we're seeing, I mean, we're seeing a lot of folks with wounds in their feet and their legs, a lot of infections, a lot of things like that, a lot of mobility issues folks that are just like not able to move a lot. We also are seeing a lot of mental health things come up, so SUD, and as well as some psychosis. So a lot of folks that are seeing and hearing things, and we're trying to direct them to mental health care. So we do have a nurse on staff. One of the bigger issues is that building that kind of rapport is difficult. So folks just, in my experience and what I've seen, just are like, I have this issue, but you know, I'm embarrassed, or I don't want to talk about it, or I don't want you to see it. So building that rapport and building that trust with us is going to take a lot of time. Does that answer your question?
Let me follow up. So 48 of those were around 72nd and Pacific this week, and then near the stability site, and then before the sweep under the overpass by the casino. That was a big one. Yeah, I think that, you know, right now that it's only a nurse. It is a lot of wound care and foot care, but we are also collecting data about what their highest health priorities are. But I think that it makes sense in that, like, where we are in building trust, those are the things that folks are willing to say. But I will also say, you know, I am delighted that we're starting to see people multiple times in different parts of the city. And so being able to like track that progression from, you know, on the first day it was a wound care, on the third time we've seen them, it's cellulitis, right? So yeah, we also had I had a meeting with Greater Lakes, and my understanding is that, you know, they have solved the problem of taking meds out with them, because, you know, the current understanding at the health department is that we can't do that. And I think myself and the two providers that are coming on, we really want to solve that problem, so that we know if there are, you know, certain meds that are needed, that we have them on our person to get people at least started.
So along those lines, you mentioned that there are people with serious mobility problems. And when people try to donate wheelchairs and walkers to the outreach closet, we don't have room for them. Are you making a provision so that you have a space? And could I send those things to give somebody a number to send those things to if they try to offer them to us?
You know, Teresa, I'm so glad that you brought this up, because then I get to tell you that this week we spent a lot of time and energy organizing all our supplies. Isaiah was part of that. So we have had all of our supplies in multiple offices in a storage unit. The storage unit was completely packed. It was a 10 by 20 storage unit. So now we have 2 rooms at the health department, and they're separated between like food and medical supplies. We're also getting some medical supplies from other programs. And now we have 3 storage units that are completely organized, they're usable, and they are all inventoried. So we know actually like what we have, and what we have to give out. And Teresa, I have save space in one of our storage units exactly for mobility devices. So yes, the answer is.
Great. I see a couple more hands up, so let's get through those. Paula, you're next.
Yeah, just wondering, are you strictly City of Tacoma city limits?
Yes,
We
correctly.
are for delivering medical care. However, I think that it makes sense because the population is so transient, right? That like, especially when we have these parking locations, potentially doing outreach outside of the bounds just a little bit, to let people know about the locations within the city of Tacoma.
So we have our mobile unit that is regularly scheduled, has been for the last 4.5 years. 146 Impact Avenue, 163rd Impact Avenue, and now we are doing the Moore Library, which is at inside the city limits of Tacoma, which will be twice a month too on Wednesdays. And I don't have the exact dates on Wednesdays, but
okay,
it would be great to be able to partner and have you guys there, doing that. So
Paula, I'm putting you down. I
okay.
would love to talk more about that. Can you put your contact info in the chat?
I have it.
Absolutely.
So I can
Okay.
email Paula. How about I email you and Brogan, and then we could just coordinate from there.
Perfect. Thank you, Isaiah.
Awesome.
Christine?
And Christine.
Sorry, I'm stepping on Rob's toes.
No, it's all good.
Yeah, hey, I'm so excited that this is operational. This is just so fantastic. I just have a couple of questions. Is it only funded for 1 year, or what, how much does the pilot cover?
We received notification about this grant in October. That is my understanding. I wasn't here. It sounds like we got the money in December, but this particular grant year ends June 30th, right? As you can imagine, because not that much has happened, we have the dollars to go through the end of the year. But right this second, we don't have permission from the city of Tacoma to spend those dollars after June 30th.
Is there anything we can do, like, as to advocate for that? To,
You
I
know,
mean,
I will leave that up to you. I think I am unable to comment on that.
okay. And then my second question is, do you intend to use any, like, healthcare volunteers, or is it all just paid staff?
Yeah, right this second, so we have MRC. I would love to, talk to them. I think that the big holdup right now is like, even for these parking locations, I can't fully get those lease agreements executed until we have permission to operate past June 30th, right? So right now our deployment schedule is we're just piloting these full deployments with the availability of the clinical staff that we have available right now. But I think I've said before, the ARNP is expected to go up to 1.0 September 1, right? So that's when we would really have a more robust deployment schedule that is multiple areas. And once again, I just want to hit on what Isaiah said. So I heard y'all. The plan was never only parking locations, right? Like we plan to try doing follow-up care for folks, as well as have a form on our website so that coalition members can direct us to people. So we have to figure all that out, right? We have not done a full deployment yet, but that is my hope.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for answering so many questions. This was more extended than I expected, but it's great to hear that there's progress being made. All right, and our last government update, Wyatt shared with me in chat that there's really no new updates from the County Department of Emergency Management, so that's great. So we can move on in our agenda. I did want to make one agenda note that Trisha Munson, who's working with Common Street Consulting, had to leave for another meeting. So we'll invite Trisha back for a future meeting to talk about what they're doing across the county, and look forward to that. So let's rejoin conversation that we started before Representative Strickland got here, and that is about advocacy. I will raise up what Bianca shared, that it definitely sounds like there's a two-part advocacy opportunity with the city of Tacoma to urge that they extend the contract to be able to work through the end of the year on the street medicine program, but also use that as an opportunity to encourage the city to reconsider their current harassment campaign against folks who are living within the camping ban zones. That is making it hard not only for the street medicine program, but for all outreach programs to be able to maintain contact and help people who are currently homeless and living on the streets in those areas within those boundaries. If only we could have an accounting of the amount of time and money that's being wasted trying to re-find people, it just drives me crazy. And I know it really drives people crazy who are trying to desperately find people who they know need help, who they have help lined up for, and they can't find them. So the policy right now just seems like the definition of insanity. The only other advocacy thing I wanted to mention, and you heard Devin talk a little bit about this earlier, is in relation to the still follow-up that's happening from the state legislative session. Governor Ferguson still has not signed the budget bills. That should be happening one way or the other within the next week. So it's unclear what the final disposition will be of a number of budget items, including there could be potentially changes in the funding that comes from the Department of Commerce to the state, to the county. So if you have an interest, there is a feedback form on the state website. You can encourage the governor to sign the budget using the feedback form that exists there. And we'll keep an eye out on if the governor decides to veto parts of the budget that was sent to him. If that happens, there's every possibility that there still could be a special session called. So stay tuned. We'll see what happens with that. But at this point, if and when the governor signs the budget bills, then we'll be able to shift advocacy to other priorities. So thanks for your patience on that. And any questions about state legislative items before we move on with the agenda? I know you all are tired of hearing me talk about it. I think I'm tired of hearing myself talk about it, but it keeps going. Even though session ended a month ago, almost a month ago. All right, so let's move on to coalition committee updates. And I don't know if we have any specific things we wanted to share here. Teresa, anything in mind? Oh yeah, and Courtney, let's actually go to you for that conversation about the Bring America Home Now campaign.
Thank you. I'm having trouble with my tech. Some parts of my screen don't work and it was hard for me to raise my hand.
It's all good. You put that in the chat and I'm like, ding.
Yeah. Now I'm trying to find my my notes. I am, as most of you know, I work for the Lived Experience Coalition, and the Lived Experience Coalition is working with the National Coalition for the Homeless. We are establishing a Northwest Field office. And one of the initiatives of the NCH, National Coalition for the Homeless, is the Bring America Home Now campaign. I put in the final link to do the sign up in the chat. That's what that is. But if you just Google Bring America Home Now, you can find out more about the overall campaign. And let's see, that's what I'm trying to bring up now, so that I'm clear and concise.
I can share it on screen too, if that'd be helpful.
Excellent. Well, thank you. NCH, like the LEC, is a forest bias organization. The campaign focuses on 6 major policy areas. Housing is a basic human right. Health and homelessness are inextricably linked. Employment provides not only income, but meaning and connection. And livable incomes are essential to prevent homelessness. Education and training play a critical role for many. And homelessness is a civil rights issue. And homelessness is inextricably linked to systemic racism. So I am still learning more about the Bring America Home campaign, but we have been challenged as field office leads to increase participation, at the very least, get people signed up. So please, at the very least, sign up. Even if you don't have a lot of time to share on this subject, please sign up so that you get updates for when we do any letter writing campaigns or direct actions. On April 22nd, we had a direct action. If you could make it to DC, there was a DC action. But then a lot of states and locations had local actions, protests in front of federal courthouses and the like. That overlapped with me providing end-of-life care, the planning phase for April 22nd. And my co-lead in the field office was inundated on another project. So we did a shortly planned letter writing campaign effort. We hosted a Zoom call where we offered a template and some guidance on personalized stories. As Representative Strickland said, we personalize our stories. So not every action is a fly to DC action. Not every action is a protest action. Sometimes it's as friendly and simple as letter writing, but we do ask that you just get on the list so that you can become informed and aware of actions when they become available. And if you can join us, please do. But right now, even just adding a name to the list of people who care is enough. At this, please just sign up, even if you can't do much with it at this time. Maybe your circumstances will change as time goes on and you'll be able to give more time to this, but you will receive an invitation to Bring America Home Now meetings if you'd like to join us. There are opportunities to become state captains. And so there's opportunities beyond, but even if you can't take those up, just adding your name to the cause is helpful. And so please do that minimum. And if you can do more, you are invited and welcome to do that as well. So, and this again is a National Coalition for the Homeless, for us, by us organization, and that works at a national level. And it is devastating to be in some of these meetings as the litany of attacks on our community are recited and reviewed for action and protest and letter writing. So if you have some capacity to be devastated for an hour, please join us. But it's also invigorating to talk about the different opportunities that this allows us to take up in pushing back, fighting back, and standing up for ourselves and for those in our community. So please follow the link, add your name, and join the cause.
Thank you, Courtney. All right, so back to committee updates. I don't think we have anything specific to share, although I could preview a little bit of our progress on the coalition website briefly. But I wanted to remind folks of the opportunities there are to participate in committees. So just go through the litany of meetings. On every Monday at noon, we have the Safe Sites for All meeting focused on safe sites and safe parking. And that meeting happens from noon to 12:30. And then at 12:30, we switch gears and go from 12:30 to 1 talking about advocacy. So everyone is welcome to that. The meetings are listed on the website. On Wednesdays at 3 o'clock, we have the meeting of the steering committee. And that's the group that meets every week to talk about whatever the burning issues are of the week to start off the meeting, and then focus very much on finalizing agenda items for these meetings that happen every Friday. Anybody who attends the steering committee is welcome. You don't have to have any special status to be there. And then on Thursdays, we have a group of us meeting from 9:30 to 10. Right now, it's been a work session to work on the transition to a new coalition website. And this is where I'll very briefly share the current status of the website that Lori and others have been working on, and that we're hoping to make a lot of progress on here between now and the end of the month. The big addition this week is that we have been trying out a new calendar widget that will allow us to create repeating meetings very simply and display information about all the upcoming meetings for the coalition in a way that's going to be a little more visually appealing, and also offers the opportunity, if people want to see it in a calendar view. Oh, now it's not going to work for me. Here, let me reload. see if it'll work. So if I look at the whole month view, then it actually shows it in a calendar view. You can also just look at today, or you can search for events. So coming soon to a website for the coalition. Anything that you would add, Teresa or Rosemary, who's been helping with this?
I would just say that Lori Davenport has put a lot of work into this. And that also to note that if you do go and poke around at it as we work on it, she has several pictures that are placeholders. So those things have not been determined exactly how they're going to be, but the look and feel of the website is what we are. And what, you know, what do we want to have in there? So that's part of why we did the little check-in, what was it, 2 weeks ago, about what people wanted to see and what people most often used. Yeah, I don't think I have anything else except for to invite you to come on down. Even if you don't have website development tools, you're welcome to join us to noodle this. And also about the Monday meeting, it occurred to me, Bianca, that it could be a really good time to have that conversation working with the Monday group about where could these parking spots be. That's the sort of stuff that we do work on when we're together there. So Paula is often there, and the two of you could hash out that one, and we could talk about other possibilities. So you're more than welcome to come.
Yeah, great idea, Teresa. And I did drop the link to the staging site that we're working on for the coalition. I think that should work for everyone if you want to take a look around. It's just, again, it's just a start. There's more work to be done. For instance, the shelter link doesn't actually have the shelter information in it yet. That's something I'm hoping to work on in a couple of weeks. So that's it for committee updates. Let's move on to any good trouble announcements, success stories, or good of the order items that people would like to share. I open the floor. Maybe people are tired. I know I have been there. Yeah, Christine.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I know that folks are probably familiar with the fact that there are showers offered at First United Methodist Church on Tuesday and Friday. And last week when I was there, the people who came by for showers were so appreciative. And it's just such a lovely thing that the church is doing. And it makes such a difference to people who need a shower and then can just walk in and get it.
Thank you, Christine. That's great. Great reminder about that resource. Anyone else with something they'd like to share with the 49 of us who are still in the room?
I do want to say, here's a little tiny good news report. I'm really impressed with the First United Methodist Church of Tacoma and Common Good for we were talking earlier about tents and widening the tent. I think they have pushed to widen their church's tent in a way that I have not seen other churches do. So recently, there was a group of people who do this Monday night chicken dinner at Nativity House, and they couldn't find a sponsor for some funding that they were being offered. They needed a sponsor to come under. And as many of you know who work with organizations, you don't necessarily want to have several people writing grants to the same grantors if you're already receiving grants from that place. So they were poking around and checked in with Shalom and Common Good, and they agreed to be an umbrella for that little fund. And I don't know how many of you are aware of this at Nativity House, but there are people for whom that Monday chicken dinner is a very, very big deal. So it's nice when things come together and when people are willing to stretch and help one another like that. This is a group of volunteers, and I'm very impressed with them all. So go Common Good.
All right. On that note, why don't we wrap things up for today? A little bit shorter meeting, a little more Friday for you. I will remind folks if you have the capacity and interest in helping plan future meetings, there's going to be a small group of us staying on this call. And after about a 5-minute break, we'll do some planning. For everybody else, I wish you a safe weekend and we hope to see you again next Friday.